Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for August 28th. August 28th is the 240th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 241st in leap years, with 125 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is tabby. Tabby is a noun with a surprising lot of meanings. I think the one most of us will be aware of is that tabby is a domestic cat with striped or brindled coat. A tabby can also mean a domestic cat, especially a female one, or a spinster, or a spiteful, gossipy woman. Tabby can mean a fabric of plain weave or a watered silk fabric, or it can mean building material made of lime, oyster shells, and gravel. The etymology of this word for some of these meanings comes from French, medieval Latin before that, and ultimately from an Arabic word that was the name of a town where silk was made. Cats got the name tabby after the similarity of their coats to the cloth, and the derivations of words for females are probably from shortening of the name Tabitha. The origin of the word tabby that refers to the building material most likely comes from a Spanish word that means wall. And with that, Henry Hudson discovered Delaware Bay on August 28, 1609. German-born British astronomer and composer William Herschel discovered a new moon of Saturn on August 28, 1789. This moon is called Enceladus, named after a giant from Greek mythology by that name. The moon Enceladus is the sixth largest moon of Saturn. Saturn, by the way, has 82 moons. That's a lot of moons. 53 of them have been confirmed and named, and another 29 are waiting for confirmation of discovery and official naming. Saturn's moons vary in size from larger than planet Mercury to as small as a sports arena. The first issue of Scientific American magazine was published on August 28, 1845. Initially published as a 4-page weekly newspaper, the Scientific American is still in publication. In addition, you can find them online at scientificamerican.com, and they also have an Instagram page, Scientific American. On August 28, 1859, there began the strongest geomagnetic storm on record to strike the Earth. Caused by a coronal mass ejection from the sun, this storm is known as the Carrington event, after Richard Carrington, one of the astronomers who observed and recorded it. The resulting geomagnetic storm created strong auroral displays much farther from the poles than one might ever see them ordinarily, nearly to the equator, and also caused anomalous behavior of and serious damage to the telegraph systems. For example, the line connections sparked and caught fire, and in some cases, telegraph operators received electric shocks, and some telegraph operators could even continue to send and receive messages even though they had disconnected their power supplies. We almost got zinged with a similar event in 2012. There was a coronal mass ejection every bit as strong as the Carrington event, but the aim wasn't as direct. It did hit a satellite, but the satellite was far enough away from the Earth as to not be affected by Earth's magnetosphere, and it survived the event, gave scientists a good bit of information along the way. Now, should a solar flare issue a coronal mass ejection the strength of the Carrington event again, and should that CME be pointed straight at the Earth when it flares, it could wipe out electronics and communications and possibly disrupt power supply over most of the Earth, anything having to do with lines that run through the air and the transformers. Let us hope such a thing doesn't occur in our lifetimes. If you're curious about that and would like more information about these kind of geomagnetic storms, I've placed a link in the show notes about it. This is the birthday of American author and illustrator Tasha Tudor, born August 28, 1915. While their styles are slightly different, I might suggest a comparison to Mary Englebright. Tasha Tudor might be the Mary Englebright of her generation, or Mary Englebright might be the Tasha Tudor of our generation. Tasha Tudor was born Starling Burgess, but her father was an admirer of the character Natasha from the book War and Peace. So it wasn't long until little Starling picked up the moniker Tasha. In addition, her mother, Rosamond Tudor, was an artist, and people would say, "This is Rosamond Tudor's daughter, Tasha," leading people to think that her name was Tasha Tudor. She liked the sound of it and started going by the name of Tasha Tudor, and eventually had her name legally changed to Tasha Tudor. She lived to the age of 92. While we're talking about authors and illustrators, this is the birthday of American author and illustrator Jack Kirby, born August 28, 1917. He was primarily a comic book artist, writer, editor, and is best known for the Fantastic Four, Thor, Captain America, to name a few. Jack Kirby lived to the age of 76. Today's song is How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by the Bee Gees, number 1 on August 28, 1971. The Bee Gees, consisting of brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb, actually started making music together as long ago as 1955. It wasn't easy, but they were determined to pursue a successful music career. They really began to make it in the 1960s with the New York mining disaster of 1941, which took off in 1967. In 1969, they began to experience a little internal conflict, a sense of rivalry within the group, a little jealousy maybe. And in December of 1969, Barry and Maurice parted ways professionally. Less than a year later, in August of 1970, they made up and settled their differences, got back together. In this spirit of reconciliation, they wrote How Can You Mend a Broken Heart in August of 1970. They initially offered it to Andy Williams, but also recorded it themselves in January of 1971. As of August 28, 1971, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by the Bee Gees begins its 4th week in that number 1 spot. Link in the description. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with the link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include the link to my blog page. That is called, no really. You can also find me on Rumble, Parler, BitChute, and Getter. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.